You can go straight, introduce yourself, and start the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, let me try to maximize my slides. Okay, can you see my slides?
Yes, we can see your slides. We can see.
Okay, okay, great. Yeah, so good evening over there. Um, I'll try to be quick because I have another presentation which is actually about to start in the next few minutes. I understand sometimes it takes some time. The timing is very hard, especially for big events like this one today. So my name is Johnson. I'm a software engineer by profession, but I'm also a consultant with the World Bank, and I've been supporting governments in countries in West Africa and East Africa, specifically developing social registries as well as management information systems for social protection. So I was asked to talk about emergency, social registry in West Africa, and I'll focus mainly on the ones I've supported, the couple of them which I'll highlight, but mainly I'll focus on the ones I've highlighted. So I've also been told that the audience is quite familiar with what a registry is, so I'll not drill much about it, but just to give a quick overview is that usually it's a database, sometimes it's a database, sometimes it's a system that supports intake, registration, and determination of potential eligibility among more or different social protection programs. So we can go over, of course, a list of why we need social registries. But if you look at the diagram on the right, it summarizes it all. So usually, rather than each program going to the communities and doing registration, doing outreach, and then then applying the criteria to enroll, usually have a national database that has households that have been categorized in some kind of manner as agreed by each country, and then you have some kind of uniform eligibility assessments that programs can actually use to enroll. So each program, of course, will come on with its own criteria. But ideally, when you say you want to support the extreme poor, if you have a national protection policy that says let's support the poor, at least there is a way that you uniformly assess who is poor and who's not poor. So because of this, of course, there are very many other benefits, but one of the useful features of social registry is that you can quickly scale up a program. So if you get additional funding, you don't have to go to collect data, but you simply go to the registry, look at what information you have there, and immediately scale up. For disasters, the same thing. When a disaster happens in an area, you can actually be able to go to this registry and then figure out who actually is affected, and then response teams can quickly go and support these teams. So we have different information that is captured in registries. It all depends on the country context, but we have similarities in most countries. Of course, you have identification information, you have information about socio-economic situation about households that includes education, health, employment. You have information about assets, information, and more other information that can be diverse depending on the different entities or players social protection in the country. I think for Gambia, for example, we had the stakeholder meeting that agreed on different questions that we should have in the registry. That would include something like disability, if you're actually having participating in other programs, different services, food security status, etc. So the information that's captured is different. But of course, we have baselines that are used across different registries. But again, different countries decide on what information they want to have in the database, depending on the situation of their households in their countries. Yeah, so we usually have systems. We have systems that support, of course, the registry, and I think this is one of the key parts. Collecting data for the entire country and managing it and storing it is not quite an easy task. It's quite complicated from the time you start collection to the time you actually do quality checks, the time you validate it, the time you actually categorize it, and then you share it with different programs. You have various tools that actually are used across different social registries to be able to manage this. But one of the things I wanted to highlight is under intake and registration. So different countries adopt different mechanisms. Some do census, which is door-to-door, like what we did in Gambia. We did that in Ghana. We did that in Liberia. And many other countries do census. Other countries do on demand. You set up centers, and then you do an outreach campaign, and then inform households to come and register. Others do could develop registries from other national databases. I think one of the examples that happened was Sudan. Because the Sudan actually, which is now in turmoil, had actually a very good approach. For them, what they did is that they had their national ID was widespread, so they got a national ID and then tried to connect data from different databases, and were able to build a registry. And one of the key benefits with that, they were able to rapidly provide benefits during COVID. And then, of course, at the bottom, you can see there's AI, ML, big data. I'm sure you've heard about AI and machine learning. It's now the key thing all over the place. There are now new ways to be able to use some of these techniques to be able to build registries. Of course, it has become apparent that census is quite expensive and also timely and it's very expensive, and at the same time takes too much time. So people try and figure out what's the best way to be able to build registries without having to collect door-to-door data. So the other important aspect of registries that we can integrate registries with other databases. As I've given an example for Sudan, we're able to develop a registry by connecting different databases together and be able to create family trees. And from family trees, we're able to create households. Of course, one of the key underlying commonality you need across the country is having a unique identifier. Then it becomes easier for you to connect different households and different members together using data from different sources. So, of course, that leads us now into dynamic registries. Dynamic registries where you can combine lots of data from administrative systems, from big data. We have core data records. We have things like mobile money. We have things like remote sensing, satellites, and so on. Of course, you have to have smart algorithms that can duplicate, that can do data cleaning, data analysis, and then you have that feed into a social registry, and then you can have all the beneficiary management systems picking out of there and doing the other services that you provide to the beneficiaries. Of course, you need foundational systems. Again, like I mentioned, one of them is the unique identifiers, biometrics, and many other things. So before I move on to West Africa, just this is a diagram I picked one of the publications. I forgot to quote the source, but you can see that registry is actually been used in quite different applications across the world. I think for Gambia, I've only used them for cash transfers and some other programs, but you can see they've used registries for labor and employment, social services, emergency assistance, in-kind programs, and the different examples you can see for different countries. So some of the case studies that you can actually reach out and maybe study and see how they've used social registries to support other services apart from social protection. There's an initiative, for example, in Ghana to be able to support subsidies on electricity for the extreme poor. So you can see it goes beyond cash transfers and then goes into other areas that governments would like to provide benefits for those who they think are extreme poor. So in West Africa, we have a couple of registries that have been developed. I think one of them is the Ghana GNHR. Most of us, I think, know Ghana, know the GNHR. We have Nigeria also has a social registry. It has it at both the federal and state levels. It supports one of the National Safety Net Program, also the Condition Cash Transfer Program, as one of the key big users of the registry. Senegal also has one. Mali also has one called the Unified Social Registry. We have one in Liberia, which is called the Liberia National Social Registry. It targets one of the new projects called Realize. I will show you some graphs on how this is actually being used. And before that, also targeted some other cash transfer programs in the country. Of course, we have also the Gambia National Registry, and then Togo also is in the process of development. Not only Togo, but many other countries are also in the process of development of these registries. So if I may deeply talk about the GNHR and Liberia household registry, I think my colleague Phil will talk about the Gambian National Registry more. First of all, I think every time you want to build a registry, it must be housed in an institution in the country. You also discuss how you're going to collect your data, how you're going to assess your households, and of course, you must have infrastructure. So for GNHR, I think also for Liberia, it's housed under the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, and then it was developed under bank-funded projects, a project called GSOP, and the other one was Ghana Productive Society Program, which is currently ongoing. they've done data collection for for a couple of regions, but not yet completed. They plan to complete the entire country using the recently concluded national population houses census, because we noticed that the census collects more or less the same data that we do collect with our questionnaire for the social registry. At the same time, we could be able to use the census data to be able to compute PMT. So the question was, can't we use this data to be able to complete the national registry? So on discussions are ongoing as well with the Ghana statistics. It's called GSS. GSS is basically the Jubos of Gambia, and they're trying to discuss and see how ways they can actually use the data that they created under the census to be able to build the social registry. And I think that's quite an innovative approach that to actually reduce costs. And the benefit of that is that every 5 years you have new data. So you can have a census swipe every 5 years on the social registry, and then after another 5 years you have another census running. So you have an updated registry. Of course, census was used for the first approach, but we believe that the second approach using the national census data will actually reduce on the cost significantly. And of course, they had to develop an infrastructure to manage the survey, to manage data collection, quality assurance, and the other things that follow, like case management, data updates, and data sharing. So that's the status of Ghana. So you have a map of Ghana, bottom left. So the green areas are the areas they've completed, and then the orange, yellow is where they're actually working currently, and then the white area is the area that I've been talking about, which they plan to complete using census data. And then you have also some graphs showing the different categorizations of statistics on how the poor, extreme poor, and non-poor are distributed across the different regions that they've completed. So they have finished 5 regions, and then 3 are underway. And they have about 1.5 million households, about 6.9 million household members, and out of these, 251 actually extreme poor. Yeah, so the register, of course, includes data about poverty, human capital, that includes education, health, etc. Of course, you also have profiling assets and structures, location of these households, information about jobs and livelihoods, also financial inclusion. I think here they collect information about mobile money access and who has mobile money, so that, and those who have actually what they call eSwitch access. eSwitch is basically the national. It's a switching platform that allows you to connect to link beneficiaries to different payment service providers managed by a different company called JIPS. And then, of course, we'll see another slide which shows how this data has been used by other programs. So from the data, of course, you can do a lot of analysis and you can be able to map out different areas. So I think this is a mapping that actually shows the different areas and how the extreme poor are distributed. If you look at, for example, Boles, you can see that the red dots basically are the extreme poor households, and then you have the non-poor, and the blue ones are poor. So quickly, you can have an overview of exactly how things are going in an area because of the data collected registry. And you can see, like, for example, in Swala, it's distributed across the entire area. But if you look at the East Gonja, you can see that the distribution is around close to the river. And if you look also in Bole, you can see that there's some kind of pattern that shows where the extreme poor are actually located. And if you actually include satellite maps, again, they will actually reveal more detail in some of these areas. And that's why there's a belief that we don't have to actually do door-to-door census, but we can use available data from all these big data companies that are collecting this data to be able to develop registries. Yeah, these are some of the systems they have. I won't talk about the systems for now, but I'll share these slides with the team so they can actually see what systems they have. Maybe they can duplicate in other countries. So GNHR has been used by LEAP. LEAP is one of the biggest cash transfer programs in the country. There's another one, Public Works Program, and the PI programs for selecting the beneficiaries. Again, GNHR was used for COVID, for providing cash transfers for COVID during the COVID time. It has been used again by WFP. It supports persons affected with COVID. It has been used by NHIA, a national insurance scheme that provides, I think, insurance to the non-poor. It has also been used. I don't have the other stakeholders that have come to GNHR to use the data. I haven't captured that in the slide, but maybe I'll update that as well. Recently, I'm sure you've heard about the the Kasombo Dam spillage, there's been flooding around River Volta. And I think what we learned from this is that the GNHR, if you look at the map on the left, you can see that on the left side, the blue lines, GNHR had collected data on the left of the river, but you don't have right on the right of the river. You see the yellow. No, the other way around. So GNHR has data on the orange marks, and there's no data on the blue side. Okay, and therefore GNHR is able to provide response teams data on the households that actually potentially have been affected by the floods. And for areas where they don't have data, of course, this is a challenge, and then all these response agencies are trying to go in again to collect this data and try to provide assistance. So in this case of rapid scale up, you can see that whenever there's an issue like what happened in Ghana, there's been another incident that happened in Sierra Leone some time back. Registries come in very, very important to be able to identify who actually has been affected, and then you can provide support and relief to the victims. Or whether you want to target only the extreme poor, you'll have that information in the registry, or whether you want to target all those who have been affected, again, you'll have that information. So that means that response agencies can actually quickly support all the flood victims that lived on the right of the river. As you can see, we had GNHR there, but we didn't have GNHR on the left of the river, and that may take some time because now these agencies have to go in and collect data to be able to support the flood victims. Okay, what about Liberia? Liberia also has a registry as well, housed by the Ministry of Gender. Again, data collection was by census, but what the other thing they did also was to capture structures and community level data, which I'm going to show you that has been very useful. I have very many slides in Liberia, but for the interest of time, I couldn't put all of them here to show the different potential use cases that actually have benefited from the data in the registry. But what other information can be used by other agencies, organizations to facilitate whatever they do. They also have a system to manage the registry, plus also a program management information system, which is housed by the social register as well, that supports programs like cash transfers, public works, business support, etc., etc. So they also have the data includes household, individual assets and dwelling. It also includes community mapping. That's basically doing a mapping of different services available for the communities and try to see which households are covered, which households live beyond 2 kilometers from the services, and maybe that information can be used for planning as needed. So this is the coverage of Liberia. So where the blue ones have been completed, that's Bomi, Monsterrado, Bong, Nimba, and then Grand Clue at the bottom, and Maryland, and then the white ones have not been completed. But I think again they received some more funding under the new project to continue data collection in some of these areas that are colored white. Yeah, so the first program utilized data from the sociologists from those two counties, the Bomi and Maryland, and then the new project which is realized, which actually became effective, I think, 2 years ago, is actually targeting, is using the data from the registry from all the areas. You can see there's the component. The program has different components. Component 1 and 2. Then there's 5 and 6. You can see the different colors, different components. For example, the light blue is component 1 and 2. And then you have the green component 6, and then you have the 5 component, and the dark blue is component 5. So you can see that actually the data has been useful for this program, as they're able to use the data from the social registry. So for some areas, of course, you notice that some areas are not covered. So as part of Realize data collection, they use the tool for the social registry, so that as they collect data for the households that are going to be enrolled as part of the program, that data again is used for the social registry. So by doing that, they're able to collect data. Remember, in the previous slides, I only showed you that there were only a few counties. You can see like Bomi, Mastorado, and so on that were covered. But if you see, Realize is covering the entire country. But as they collect data from different counties, they actually use the social registry tool. And by doing that, the registry is also benefiting from the program, in that data is shared with the social registry. And by doing that, of course, the registry is expanding. And very soon, as you can see, the whole country is almost covered, apart from the few counties which are white. And maybe another additional financial program will take care of that, or any other donor community that has some funding for the registry. Because of the additional information they collected, which is the community mapping, you can see they've done a little simulations just to show a bit of location. For example, this one shows us where the health centers are. That's the green ones, and then you can see the red dots are the health centers. Then you have the green circles around the health centers showing that that's the 2-kilometer buffer. So it shows you that how many households are extreme poor that are living within the 2-kilometer buffer from the health center, and then the green one, of course, the 5-kilometer buffer. And you can see that there are very many black dots outside the outer circle, the lighter yellow circle, meaning that if the government had access to this data, or which they do anyway, they can actually be able to quickly look at the distribution of the health centers vis-a-vis where the extreme poor households are and how they can be able to intervene or help them to access health services quickly. They've done that as well okay, that's just a table which summarizes what you've seen with the other slide. This is market access, same structure. The markets are shown with a star, then you have the 2-kilometer radius, and then you have the 5-kilometer range, and those are outside the 5-kilometer range. Again, you can see how which farmers can access actually markets. Because one of the tools, of course, we talk about farming, we talk about those rare animals, poultry, who have crops, do a lot of things, and then try to find out if they're close to any market, because how do they sell their produce whenever they are ready to sell? And this argument gives you an idea of how far farmers are to the markets, or how close they are to the markets, especially those that are extreme poor. This also shows does education. It's the same story. Also maps schools in relation to where households are, especially focusing at the extreme poor, try to find out how far the extreme poor households are, and so on. So this can also help you, especially if you're trying to do a cash transfer program and you want to use, for example, mobile money. You could actually be able to map the different agents where the locations are, and you also try to, using data from the registry, because every household has GPS coordinates captured, you can be able to do this kind of analysis and know if I was to run a cash transfer program based on mobile money, where are these agents, and how can we be able to cluster the different beneficiaries to ensure that everyone is actually close to an agent, and then maybe have discussions with the telecom provider, mobile money providers, to be able to set up more agents, so that at least every household or beneficiary is close to an agent as much as possible, or any other financial service institution. It could be a bank, it could be bank agents, etc., etc. So this information is available in most of our registries, and Gambia as well. We have GPS coordinates. Maybe the other thing we didn't do for Gambia is to do community mapping, map community structures, community services, and then do this. But of course, that is very easy to do. You can do that, and then you can overlay it with the data in the registry, and can be able to do a couple of scenarios that can help social protection and also inform policy at the national level. Yeah, so there's a lot of data that can be used to inform policies and projects. There's information about population, about demographics. There's biometric data as well. Who has access to IDs? There's education and water utilities, and also digital and financial inclusion services. Of course, for Liberia, we went ahead and tried to implement a couple of things. And one thing we did for structure listing, when you're developing a register, one of the things you do is structure listing. It helps you to be able to plan, know how many structures are out there, and try to plan your data collection so that you know how many meters you want, how long it's going to take you, what's the cost, etc. So we tried to use some technology to be able to improve or simplify the process. One of the things they used was open building data. So we did a mapping of all the buildings using satellite imagery. I don't know if somebody has heard about open street data. I mean, there's already data that has already covered. They gave us the data for the entire Liberia, all the structures, and automatically we could assign a structure number to each and every structure that we found. So that helped us know how many structures we expect. Of course, using machine learning, you could be able to tell that some of these structures are household structures, some of them are non-household structures, but of course with some errors But you could tell that these are buildings, a commercial building sometimes, and this is not a commercial building. But overall gives us at least an estimate of how things will look like when we get there. I think that helps us simplify the structural listing exercise, which usually takes long as well, because the community has, the enumerators has to go into the communities and do a sweep of the entire area, trying to label all these structures and finding out how many people live here and so on and so forth, which takes another quite simple amount of time. But this helped us move quickly. And of course, one of the other things they did was to take pictures of different households, and we found that some pictures were errors made during data collection. Some pictures were attached to different wrong households. We'd find a non-household structure attached to a household structure and so on. But we were able to resolve that, of course, using machine learning techniques and try to correct that. And the simple thing was basically to do is to use a small paper and assign to provide cards to each household, and we found that useful. It looked like something very basic, but later on we found it useful, especially when we went back for spot checks, when we went back to enroll households onto programs. It was very easy for us to be able to identify households and link them to the resource registry. And different programs go in there, they collect numbers on their cards, and then they come to you and say, yeah, I want a list of all these guys whose numbers I have here. Of course, that didn't come with a problem. Of course, people started selling these cards. Because once you start issuing these cards, it creates some kind of impression that somebody's going to come back and probably enroll you in a program. So people started selling this card, which also became a problem at some point. But anyway, all these things tend to happen, and I think most of us know that such things happen. But the good thing is you always have to have a system, GRM or case management, to manage some of these things. Yeah, I'll stop here for today. I couldn't talk about the other registries in detail. I've not been supporting those countries, but I think for the countries I've supported, I've just tried to pick up a few things. But have more use cases of how data has been used in the two countries. I think Gambia is doing very well in terms of usage of their data, as Philly, I think, we've tried to present. And I think we've seen the benefits of social registries, especially after COVID, governments were quick to respond to the shocks, but there was no data, and people were running around looking for data. But for countries that had registries, of course, they would quickly use the registries to assess who should be targeted first. For those who had programs that would target specific users, specific households, and those that would do universal, of course, then you just target everybody who's available. But again, that data is very useful for you in the planning process as well. So so thank you very much for your attention, and I'll stick around for another 2 or 3 minutes for questions. Over to you, MC.
Thank you so much, Johnson. The presentation was very good. I know because of the lack of time, you have to run very fast through it. However, I think it was very clear, and we were very much keenly listening, and then I think we understand exactly what you are trying to say. So thank you so much. Johnson is supposed to go into another meeting, and then we also have 2 more presentations. We can ask 2 questions to Johnson, and then we move. Okay, Johnson, I think we will release you, and then we will allow you to go. You wanted to?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Johnson. And then we will now have Chris de Newburg to take us to targeting options. Chris, you are welcome. And Chris was in country a day before the program, meaning he was here on Sunday, and all along he's with us, so I think we need to give him a round of applause. Chris, thank you for coming.
I will use this microphone since I will have to keep you awake for another 3 hours. Okay, joking. Let okay. Now my computer doesn't react. What's happening? The presentation is here. It was here. No, it doesn't react. Oh, now it's here. There it is.
It will come, don't worry.
Okay, good. It's going to be stay that way. Control, can you see what's happening? Nothing.
Control room, okay. Can you go there? He is here. Okay. So we use this here. It doesn't recognize you. Thank you. Okay, good afternoon again. This is already 10 minutes into the 3 hours, so so we gain 10 minutes. So I shortened my presentation, noticing that you're running late in the program, but I still wanted to have a couple of messages that the organizers asked me to reveal during the conference. My name is Christian de Boer. I'm the director of the Social Policy Research Institute and a professor of economics at the University of Tilburg in the Netherlands. I live in Belgium. The Social Policy Research Institute is also located legally in Belgium, but the collaborators of the institute, which are 15 researchers, senior researchers, are living across the world, including Africa, Latin America, and Asia, and most of them live in Europe, though, but not in Belgium. Only 3 of them live in Belgium. We have been active in the Gambia. We have been evaluating the BREST program a couple of years ago when the BREST program ended.
And we've been involved in the family strengthening program, and that's why I was keen of coming to Gambia, because these programs were like implemented, or these projects are implemented by colleagues, and they speak with high esteem about the Gambia for several reasons. So I thought, okay, I better go and look myself. And so I'm here. So what I'm asked to talk about is about what are the options if we think about targeting. This is not going to work. What are the options if we think about targeting? This is not going to get better. Like this, it's better. What are our options when we think about targeting? And what is targeting about? Targeting is about making decisions who get benefits, right? And that's a pretty simple. It's getting worse.
I can help manage it.
Yeah, no, you will not be able to because there are too many animations in it. That's it's very kind, but. So it's about. Okay, now it works. It's about. Now the mic doesn't. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, fine. So it's about making decisions about who's getting benefits, and what we want to do if we really target the poor, we want to realize this graph. Meaning, at the left-hand side of the graph are all the poor people. At the right-hand side of the graph are the richer people. Most of them are not very rich, but at least richer than poor, right? And what you want to do is to spend your money most on the poor people. Simple as that. That's what we want to do. And why do we want to do that? Well, there are a couple of good reasons to do that. The main reason is efficiency. We want to spend our money wisely. So we don't want to waste it on people who don't need it, or households who don't need it. There's also an opportunity cost. If we are target very well, the people that we're targeting can be given more money if we spend the same amount of money, right? So that's also, and it's politically appealing. Politicians like it. They say, yeah, we give to the poor and the vulnerable. Great, that's very good. This is what we get, and so this is about, if we have a pie of $100, we can give everybody $1 in the country, or we can give the bottom part of the country $5. That's the idea. Okay. And the idea is this. Is this also what we get? This is what we get in most countries. This is the effect of social protection in most countries. A little bit given to the poor, somewhat given in the middle, and that's not intended, these are errors, but people get it. And then there is social insurance, where I and most of you are part of it. We are in the formal sector, we contribute to pensions and to unemployment and all kind of stuff, and health insurance. And when we need it, we can get a benefit. And on top of that, for the very richer part of people can invest in private insurance. And that's what, unfortunately, despite what we had in mind, this is what we realize in most countries in the world. So how come? Why is that? And part of these things, of why it is already, was given by Stephen Kidd this morning for those who attended the first group meeting. And one of the important actions there is, and he gave this graph, which was done by one of my students, by the way, Björn Gelders, who calculated the changes between two years, 2009, 2010, for all the poor and the rich and so on people in Indonesia. The poor people are the red people in 2009. And see what happened to the poor people in 2010. That's only 1 year later, right? It's not like 10 years later, no, it's 1 year later. The same poor people are still poor. But some of them are not poor anymore. They are a little bit less poor. They even become a middle income. And a couple of them are really become the richest in the society. And the same for the richest. If you look at the green part, most of the rich people stay rich. That's true in all the countries in the world, by the way. But some of the rich people go down. They don't become poor, become less rich. And even a couple of times they become really very poor. Things happen to people, even in a 1 year window. These changes are important why we are not very successful in really looking at the poor. Because the poor of today is not the poor of tomorrow. And one of the things, because my colleague from the World Bank just told you that the social registries in a lot of countries were very useful during COVID. We did research in 40 countries, including Ghana, by the way. It's not true. Social registries were pretty useless during COVID. Why was that? Because the people that were vulnerable before COVID hit were not vulnerable before COVID hit, but became vulnerable because there was a shock. And so they were not in the social registry, except for these countries like yours, where the social registry is a civil registry. It includes all households. That means you can observe all the people, which is very useful. So in these cases, social registries were very useful. In all other cases, not so useful, right? And that's the reason why. The other reason is our income distribution, not our income distribution, your income distribution. This, again, left-hand side, the poor people, right-hand side, the rich people. And this is the monthly income recalculated in PPPs. That's purchasing power, parities, dollars. It's technically, I'm an economist, so I need to say this. But what you see actually, and that's the important thing what you see, is that almost 90%, no, let's take 70% of the population, which is the vast majority of the population in your country and in your type of countries, have monthly incomes between $0 and about $300 a month. That's not a big difference. I mean, it's a big difference if you have 0 or 300. But in between, there's not so much difference between all these things. Now, what do we try to do when we use poverty targeting? What we do is we estimate the poverty line. And we say everybody to the left of that poverty line is poor, everybody to the right of that poverty line is not poor. But you have two people, blue and red. Blue was not poor when the poverty line was set. But then he or she became ill or lost her job or lost her father or her brother and became in trouble. And suddenly she drops to the left. And red found a job a couple of weeks after we made the survey and then drops to the right. So this is the other thing that's happening. And the thing is that you don't need big changes. The difference between what red and blue earns is about $10, $15 a month, given your type of income distribution. I didn't calculate this one for Gambia. We calculated this for a couple of other countries. But you see there are 3 lines. They're very similar. This is the type of income distribution we see all over the world in low and middle income countries. It changes when you have upper middle income countries and rich countries. Our income distribution looks different. I mean our meaning in Belgium. So these are the people. Is it the right poverty line? So we are not very good in constructing these poverty lines, and actually at the university we teach students, and that's also what the bank does or other people making estimates, not to use one poverty line, but to use several poverty lines and see what's in between and try to understand why people are there and not there. Because it gives you insights of how people deal with this kind of stuff. So, and this is the life cycle. It's very beautiful. It's made by a researcher in Bangladesh. It's a story of one person, a lady of 42 years old. And it gives her income over the life cycle since she was, over the last 10 years of her life cycle. The yellow line is between moderately poor and moderately rich. But what you see is that she drops all the way in 10 years' time. Her income goes up and down and up and down and up and down. And if you want to target, what is she? Is she poor or is she not poor? No. That depends on the moment you look. Okay. So again, that's why. So, given all this, what can we do? We have four main options. We have a couple of more, and I will explain that later. We have actually four main options for targeting. We can have means-tested targeting. That's what I talked about just a minute ago. We have proxy means testing. We have community-based targeting. And we have self-targeting. And let's have a look at each of them. Because actually these are our options. At least these are the pure options, but we can make smart combinations. So, if we think about means testing, we think about trying to observe people's income. And that can be by verified means test. That's what happened in our countries. If someone goes to the social assistance office or to the municipality and say, I need money because I'm in trouble, they say, wait a minute. Let's see whether you really need money, right? We're going to look at your earnings and your savings and your assets and your debts and what you have to spend and so on. And then we have a social worker making decision whether the person needs money or not. What's the problem here? Problem is that you first need a lot of information. You have to ask that people. Now people lie about their assets and income quite often, all over the world. And you need social workers. You need social workers to control that. That's very expensive. Yeah, you have to confirm all this information that comes. You need a tax office that works well, that gives you the information about people's tax declarations and so on. So it's expensive. There are two ways to reduce that cost. Either being rich and just think, okay, we will spend the money because we want to target our benefit, or say we want to have the group that comes to the social worker as small as possible. And actually that's what we do. The total population of our country that ever goes in their life cycle to a social assistance office is less than 2%. Okay, we can handle that, especially in the rich countries, it's still expensive. But we can handle that. We can also do simple means test. We just ask people, how much do you have? We have a couple of controls. We look at statistics, we look at the data that we have. We ask the doctor in the village, or the health worker, or someone else, or the neighbor. And they say, okay, fine, I think you need money. So this is the easiest, or this is the simple means testing or monitoring means testing. In a lot of countries, that's not used. Why not? Because we don't observe people's income regularly. In the best case, How long is the oldest HIES, the household income survey here in this country? The last one? 21, okay. And the next one is planned next year or in a year, right? Okay, good. So every 2-3 years we have this information. But as you've seen, things change very quickly. So after 2-3 years, most of the information, most of the information is still correct. But a good part of the information is no longer correct. So that's a problem. So we thought, or smart professors thought about, okay, let's do something different. We use a sample of the population and then use proxy means testing. That means we're going to use a statistical, an econometric trick to try to understand what makes people poor and what makes them not poor. We give it weight. Okay, it's a little bit more complicated, but that's basically what we do. If we look at someone or if we look at a household, whether they are likely to be poor or not, based on all these information and the weight of each of these variables. You've seen proxy means testing appearing in the previous presentation very often, because it's used by the World Bank all over the world, very much so. And it's okay. It works to a certain degree, but I will come back to that with a story that we recently had in Cambodia. These are the variables that, for example, in Indonesia are used for the proxy means testing. It's about the housing, it's about the floor, it's about the surface of the house, how many space you have, it's about the walls and the floor, it's about electricity, the number of meals, it's about assets, your ability to serve 3 meals a day. I'm sorry? Yeah, this kind of stuff. So 14 variables. Indicators, not variables, there are more variables. 14 indicators are used to decide in Indonesia who's poor and who's not poor. And it's called proxy means testing because we don't know the means. We really proxy them by using econometric techniques. Okay? And of course, we are very smart. So our econometric techniques looks very fancy. They're not very accurate. But you get as accurate as we get. I mean, we cannot make it better. There is another option. We can go to the communities, and especially in rural societies like yours, where half of the population lives in rural societies, you can go to the communities, because these communities are not large. I myself, my children grew up in a village of 500 people. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows more or less how wealthy or not wealthy people are. So you can go to the community leaders or to representatives and ask them, who are the households that would profit from social protection or for benefit or from help in whatever form most? The problem there is it's pretty accurate. It gives you a good, especially in smaller communities, a good idea of who needs help. The trouble is that out of our experience, and our research also comes out, that it's troublesome within the community. Because suddenly you have someone who decides whether you can give money or help or assistance to particular people and not to other people. And it goes well for a year, for 2 years, but then people get angry. Some people feel like they are discriminated against because they're not good friends with the community leader. Or they are from another family, or another ethnic group, or tribe, or whatever is important, or because they are a female-headed household. For example, there is political, there is corruption, there is things like that. So you didn't vote for me, so I'm sorry, right? So it works well. The information you get is pretty accurate, but it's not sustainable. It destroys communities. And so, okay, we use it. but the success is not great. And then finally, there is self-targeting. Self-targeting, you say, okay, we don't want to target. We let people decide themselves whether they take the benefit or not. That works to a certain degree if you manage to define the product that you, and it's usually done with in-kind assistance. So you give food to people. And if you make the queues long enough, the rich people will not come in queue, right? Yes. And you can handle that. Or if you distribute the rice, you distribute the type of rice in a way that is broken rice, which is used in India, and the rich people don't want to eat broken rice. So they are not going to get broken rice, unless they are desperate. But then they are needy, most probably, right? So that's the way to do it. So but subsidies are also a form of self-targeting. You usually don't realize that, and especially the Ministry of Finance doesn't realize it in all countries. But it's actually a form of self-targeting. If you subsidize sugar, what for example is done in the Maldives, then you subsidize the people who consume more sugar than others. People that consume more sugar are usually richer people. Your fuel subsidy, which is not unique, I mean, there are many countries with fuel subsidies, is actually a form of self-targeting. You allocate your money to people who use more fuel. The more fuel you use, the more of the benefit you get. Okay, you may like it. I never had a look at what happens in this country. We did a research in the Maldives where there was a fuel subsidy, a sugar subsidy, and a flour subsidy. 60% of the 3 subsidies was consumed by the industry, not by households. You have a huge tourist industry, of course, which is great, which is very important in the country. And the tourists, so what you actually do is subsidize Hilton. You subsidize the fuel because they need boats, consume a lot of fuel, and they need planes, which also consume a lot of fuel, and you subsidize them to transport their tourists or their guests. And you may want to do that, but you have to be aware. I mean, if that's your policy, that's fine. I mean, I'm not here to say that you shouldn't do it or you should not do it, but does it help the poor people in the country? It does, a little bit. But you waste a lot of money. Okay, waste a lot of money. Remember the first slide I started with? The reasons why we want to target is for not wasting money. So, a problem there as well. But there are also good examples. Gambia is one of them. I very much like the BREST program. And the BREST program actually didn't use one targeting method, but 2. They first used regional targeting. They targeted the 3 most eastern provinces. And then they targeted, categorically, as we call it, pregnant women and women with children younger than 2 years old. That's also targeting. You target because you think these people need help. These people live in relatively poor regions or even the poorer parts of the country.
It was the region where we registered more malnourished cases.
Yeah.
Then we are the category targeted.
Right. So that was the reason you can go for. Now, for example, we do similar research in Afghanistan, and there they try to allocate to regions where the immunization rate is very low, because they want to stimulate that. So, but actually, I found the BREST program, and we found the BEST program, working very well. It helped the households, it increased the nutrition level of the children, and it decreased the health problems of children. It increased immunization in the region, and children were checked, and the women were happy. The women felt empowered. And the cash was not very big. I mean, it was relatively, I don't remember, $600? The $600, that was what I remember. So it's not a lot of money. It's very small. But you know what happened after the program stopped? You educate for 1 year or 2 years mothers to feed their children well. And they understand how to do that. And you're happy about it. That was the basic idea. Right, so it worked. The only one thing was when the program stopped, they couldn't pay it. So these $600, even that's very small amount, helped them to pay just a little bit more so they could feed the children better. More diverse food, more meat, more proteins, which were needed by the children. So even small benefits matter. That's one of the lessons I learned in that evaluation research. And then, okay, I'm afraid my story is also informed. It's not a very happy story. That means we will have to think about beyond what simple solutions are. This is about, what I'm going to show you is about targeting errors. And so the right boxes are the dark green boxes. So if you're poor, then you should get a benefit. If you're non-poor, you should not beneficiary, right? If you are poor and you don't get a benefit, then you make an exclusion error. If you're non-poor and you get a benefit, you make an inclusion error. The right-hand box, upper right-hand box is wasting money, yes. Right? And the bottom left-hand box is not being effective, not getting the money where it's needed. And both inclusion and exclusion errors are bad if you want to target what you do. So already Steve Kidd gave you this, gave you this graph, which are calculated targeted errors calculated by development pathways in a lot of things, a lot of proxy means tested programs. Well, community-based targeting, proxy means and means tested. And the best case was Brazil, still with inclusion errors, exclusion errors. So 43% of the people in Brazil that needed the money didn't get the money. The worst case was Rwanda, where almost nobody who needs the money got the money. So it's very sad. I mean, you spend a lot of money to the wrong people, at least to the people you didn't have in mind. Maybe it's not the wrong people. Maybe the people who got the benefit also needed it, because our targeting methodology was not very good. But still, these are the figures. Development Pathways was not the only one. These are the data from a World Bank study. A good friend, Margaret Grush, calculated this in an older study. And the percentages are not very much different. Huh? We make a lot of mistakes, but even if you look at the United States, if you think it's just a problem of poor countries, in the United States, the food stamp program has inclusion errors. That means it gives money to people who don't need it, or at least don't fit the specificity of the program, is 80%. That's enormous. The TAMF program, it's still 65%. So it's also in rich countries, if you try to target this way, you will make mistakes, because we are not perfect in doing this type of job. And remember, this was the case for targeting. Remember, this was the most important thing, being efficient, not wasting money, allocating the money to people who need it, and get the people, and not allocating money or wasting people to others. This is again another table of a study we made together with Brown and Verlian and Van der Wallen. And again, look at the exclusion errors here. It's stunning. I mean, these are high percentages. And the inclusion errors, so wasting money, are still high. They're between 35 and 50%. So half of the resources you spent on money you don't want to spend them on. My conclusion is, okay, we need targeting. There's no way around. It's one of our most difficult things in social protection. You cannot do without targeting. So I'm not arguing that we should not target. But we're very bad at it. We are not very good at it. Whatever complicated econometric techniques and so on that we use, we still make quite a lot of mistakes. Then, is there no solution? I think there is a solution. I think the solution is, well, first of all, the first part of the solution is being humble. We are not as good as we think we are. And I'm old enough to say that. If I say that to my young colleagues who are about half of my age, then they look at me, oh, well, we do a lot of great things. So, yeah, well, more or less, a little bit now and then, but a lot of also things that could be better. So it's being humble about what you can do. And the second thing is to think beyond, outside the box. Well, you will get, these people will get the presentations, huh? So I will skip these because this is about the technical reasons why we are doing so bad. There's all kind of the good reasons why we do bad. It's also important to think, oh yeah, that's an important part of the message as well. Targeting is not costless. Targeting costs a lot. If our colleague from the World Bank would have, Johnson would have more time, I would ask him a simple question. How much does a social registry and the proxy means testing and the survey and maintaining the system, how much does that cost on average per country? Okay. So it comes at a cost. Sometimes in my very bad days, I think, okay, this is an employment program for World Bank consultants. Because you also need a lot of technical capacity to do this. It's not simple. I mean, and I know it. I mean, we work with these guys. I mean, and I like them. I mean, half of them have studied with me, of the social policy bunch in Washington. So it comes at a cost. And it's always trying to be smart. Okay, how much of these costs are we willing to make? And how much of that money can we use for other things? Namely, for helping poor people. Isn't there simpler ways to look at that? And I think the simple way is looking at a... No, I'm going to shift that as well because you know that... Okay, there's another thing. Okay, I forgot. There's another thing what you can do. Instead of targeting the poor, we can target the rich. So we exclude the rich part of the population, right? So we actually exclude that part of the income distribution. If we find good ways of doing it, to exclude these people, then already we do something. We won't waste money on them, so we can give it to all the rest. That's a little bit easier, although rich people are even smarter than poor people in hiding their income, their assets, and so on. I mean, in the country where I work, in the Netherlands, a recent research by the tax office appeared that the people that in percentage of their total income pay the least taxes in the country are the 5% richest part of the population. Why? Because they have accountants and lawyers to help them to reduce their income. So, yeah, if it works, but not necessarily true. So what is then a realistic achievable scenario for most countries. And it's a scenario where you combine things. And the basic message is here, try to make the part of the population for which you need targeting as small as possible. That means, okay, that's easy to say, because then you say, yeah, well, actually you say, try to keep the people who are poor as small as possible. Yeah, that's what we want to do in social policy, don't we? But there are ways of doing it with social protection. And the thing is to look at the social protection floor. This is also signed by your country, by the way. And it's introduced by the ILO together with the World Bank and with UNICEF, I think now 15 years ago. And so what you do is that first of all, you put a floor in things. You put type of child benefit. We can discuss about exactly what form it should have in your country, but a kind of things to help people with children. Help people who have people with disabilities in the house, and social pension. Helping old people. And we can discuss how old people are. I'm at the age that I feel this is a very sensitive subject, right? And make sure that your healthcare and your social services are good. If people have already access to that, that's already a lot. And that's there for everybody. The second part would be to have a poverty above that. For people that fall through the cracks, you have a poverty targeted part. You have social insurance. That's for everybody who contributes to systems that helps them to survive. And you have private insurance. That social insurance, the big part of social insurance all over the world are pensions, making sure that people at the end of their life are not miserable. And if you try to organize this step by step, because there's no country, don't be naive about this. Also, our countries have this kind of things. Most European countries have this. But it took us 120 years to do, right? Okay, you can do it lots quicker, because development goes quicker, and you can learn from our mistakes, especially from our mistakes. But this is achievable. And actually, the ILO made a lot of effort to make sure that most countries in the world can afford it, even the poorest countries. This is the last slide I will look at. What happens if we do targeting badly? We create a lot of instability in society. And currently, we are, for example, working in Cambodia, where the government and GIZ, the German Development Organization, asked us to step in because people became so angry about the targeted benefit that was constantly, I mean, it was not only the people became angry, but the community leaders said, I don't want to do this anymore. We make so many mistakes that half of my village is angry at me because we don't fix it well. So now we are trying to understand what is the underlying cause of that and trying to fix piece by piece. It's not, we are not going to do like this and it will be over. No, there's no, that's what I told them. We are not magicians. We can help. We can make technical surprises, but this is what happened so even in Indonesia, the protests were like 35% of the villages protesting against this kind of stuff. Now they ask for a password or for what? Oh, battery is running low. Okay, the computer says that it has to stop. It even doesn't want to move anymore. So I want to stop here, also because the battery will not help me. But also quoting Amartya Sen. Amartya Sen is Nobel Prize Economics 2001 or something. And he said at some point, a benefit targeted at the poor is usually a poor benefit. And it's the poor, is usually a poor benefit. That means it will not be sustained, it's difficult to finance, and it's politically difficult to keep it running. So I hope I made a couple of remarks that make you at least think. I don't have a solution for you, I mean, for this complicated problem, but I think you should be aware of what is possible and what is problematic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor. The presentation was super good. Control room. I don't think we have our mics working. Can you hear me? Okay. Maybe I'll use my own mic. At the back, can you hear me? Sam, you are sleeping. But the presentation was so good that you cannot sleep. So let us give another round of applause to Doctor. This was really a very good presentation, and we were looking forward to this kind of presentation when we met you the last time. Yeah, sure. So thank you so much, and I don't think we will have much questions for you because this was not a presentation, but it was a lecture. Yeah.
That's what I'm usually doing.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We would want Philly to come in and then do a brief presentation, then we will reserve all questions after. No, Philibal Kuninale. Today we overloaded the.
Can I use that cable that Chris is using? Yes. Can I see? Control room, can you help us here, please? Just give it to me. Just give it to the laptop. Whose laptop is this? Hello? Oh, yeah, it's going.
It's better.
Okay, thank you very much. First, I think I want to apologize on behalf of the organizers for keeping you very late. So I'll try to summarize as much as possible. My presentation is basically going to look at the Gambia Social Registry, what we have been doing and how far we have gone into developing the registry. Much of what I will say has already been said by Johnson, so I'll try to save on time by skipping some of the slides. Johnson has defined what social registries are, that they are information systems that help to support the initial phase of social protection interventions, which is the identification of potential beneficiaries for various social protection programs. Oh, the mic is on actually. Can you hear me now? Okay, I was saying I will try to save on time by skipping some of the slides that are covered in some the other presentations. Johnson has spoken about what social registries are. This slide is meant to bring all of us to speed about what they actually are, that they are information systems that are created to help support the initial phase of social protection programs, which are basically the identification of potential beneficiaries for those programs. What we are trying to address as a social protection sector is poverty and vulnerability. And when we think of the poor, we are talking about people who have whose lives are characterized by a lot of challenges, including low incomes, limited assets, lack of employment, or in some cases, even if they're employed, they are employed in the informal sector. They are mostly in areas that are largely underdeveloped. And this is what governments and partners seek to address. And in the process, they provide various support from childhood or from birth to old age. We are all aware of all the services that are provided to people across the life cycle for infants, for under fives, for children, for youth, for adults, and for the elderly. And usually, most of those services, when they're providing, they follow a certain process. They follow a certain delivery chain, which starts with assessing the needs and conditions of those potential beneficiaries, so that out of the entire population, you'll be able to tell who actually is in need, and you can target your support to those people. That phase is followed by the making a decision about who to enroll and what benefits you are going to pay them. And then we have the actual implementation, which involves paying out the benefits to them, and also taking care of any concerns that may be raised by the communities. In that process, social registries come handy in the first phase, the phase during which we reach out to people, collect data on them to help assess their needs and conditions. That is where social registries come in. They basically support the process of registration and determination of eligibility, gathering information on all potential beneficiaries. There are other systems that take care of the other phases. The decision-making phase, for example, may have beneficiary systems, and these are usually at the level of the programs themselves. They will set up systems to enroll their beneficiaries and also record information about their beneficiaries. There is also another system. There are also other systems that are maintained at the level of implementation, and these include case management systems as well as payment systems. Now we are increasingly becoming digital, and even in the Gambia, we are trying to develop digital systems of payment to beneficiaries. There were reasons why government of the Gambia decided to set up social registry. Please don't be scared when Chris presented on some of the drawbacks of some of the approaches, including PMT. I always say, if we reduce the social registry to a poverty targeting tool, we are not fully utilizing the social registry, because aside from poverty, we could also target people on other characteristics which are permanent. You want to know somebody's disability status, that doesn't change. You want to know who are you want to know the women population of a certain area, that doesn't change. The agenda doesn't change, those kind of things. And we can get those information also from the social registry. So the social registry is not an only poverty targeting tool. It is a tool that can help you target your potential beneficiaries based on several criteria. So one of the motivations for developing the social registry is the difficulty that government and partners were facing in identifying beneficiaries, which was often leading to inefficient targeting approaches by so many different programs. We are all witnesses to how government intervention during the COVID-19 pandemic was delayed, and I don't know if I have the authority to say disorganized, because there was no ready-made data to at least inform who has what condition, so that we are able to target support to the most vulnerable. The other thing that also motivated the development of a single registry in the Gambia is the fragmented nature and weak coordination that existed in the although it's improving, but that existed in the sector. We know there is no central coordinating body for social protection interventions. Any institution can get up and go and deliver support anywhere. This was often leading to fragmentation, duplication, overlaps, and often leading to inefficiency. And so government thought it's important to set up a database that could help it organize the way we target support. Also, the need to improve our response to shock. When COVID struck, when we experience floods during the rainy seasons, there is no data to inform us about the characteristics of these areas that are affected, or the populations of these areas, so that we are able to plan better our response. So to have ready-made data in place that could help us to, fall back into to understand the characteristics of these areas was also a reason. Also, government also wanted to improve the transparency in the provision of social assistance services, so that when I work at a certain institution and I am a project coordinator, I do not send the project to my control room. Can you help us, please? Is it the laptop or what? Control room, can you hear us? Can any of the organizers help us at the control room, please? Thank you. Okay, this is coming on. Okay, okay, good. So I'm back. It's like I was not touching it, that's why. So with a social registry system, even the national coordinator doesn't have the influence over who is extremely poor, who is considered poor and who is not considered poor, because this data is generated from the people themselves, and based on certain indicators, they are classified as either poor or not, or their disabilities are determined. So it helps in addressing issues of corruption or some malpractices in the implementation of social protection services. Sometimes also we see that some people would benefit from multiple programs, whereas there will be people who would not benefit from anything. So to avoid such double dipping in various programs was also one of the reasons. Okay, so the social registry development process involve a number of activities. One of them is the development of the software application, the information system that would house this data to be able to make it available to programs. And that process, we're happy to report that has been concluded the development phase, and we are now migrating the data into the system. Although we have a few modules that may need to be revised, but the development phase generally has been completed, and this was led by a consortium of IT firms, both in the Gambia and abroad. The development process also involves a public information campaign, because when we go out to register, we want to register everybody. We don't want to leave anybody behind. So we always go out in communities to enlighten them about what the social registry is and why it is important for them to take interest in registering. And this we want to acknowledge the partnership we have with the Department of Information Services for leading that part of our work. They have had several community engagements. They have had engagements with community influencers, religious leaders, as a way of enhancing acceptance and understanding about the social registry in communities. We had also had engagements with the National Assembly as well as the media, because often National Assembly members would call us and say, there is this program that is happening in this place and my people are not benefiting and you people are in charge of the social registry, implying or misunderstanding the social registry to be a social assistance program. So we thought it was important to talk to them too, and the media to help us disseminate the information.